No family, nowhere to go, she begged. Rancher, keep me. The sun had just started to disappear behind the distant hills, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. A young woman, tired and trembling, walked along the dusty road that led to nowhere she truly belonged. Her shoes were worn out and every step she took seemed heavier than the last. She carried no bag, no possessions, only the thin coat on her shoulders and a heart full of fear. Her life had changed so quickly. Just a few months ago, she had believed she had a home, a family, and some hope for the future. But those days were gone, replaced by silence, cold nights, and the constant feeling that no one cared if she lived or not. She remembered the day everything fell apart. Her parents had passed away suddenly, leaving her with nothing but a small apartment she couldn't afford. Relatives she had once thought would help had turned her away, saying she was on her own now. Friends had drifted apart, some unwilling to take sides, others too busy with their own lives to notice. She had tried reaching out to neighbors, to acquaintances, even to strangers, but no one opened their doors for her. She was alone, truly alone. Hunger had become a daily companion. Some days, she survived on the scraps she found in trash bins or small coins she could earn from doing odd jobs. But now, as the cold wind cut through her thin coat, she realized she could no longer keep walking aimlessly in search of food or shelter. She needed help, and more than that, she needed someone to believe in her. The road curved slightly, leading her past empty fields where the grass swayed gently in the evening breeze. She stopped for a moment and leaned against a fence post. Her arms were sore, her legs were sore, and her body ached in ways that sleep couldn't fix. She closed her eyes and tried to remember a time when she had felt safe. There was a faint memory of her mother smiling at her from the kitchen window, of warm soup waiting after a cold day, of laughter filling the house. Those memories made her chest ache and tears slip silently down her face. She hated crying in public, hated showing weakness, but this time she couldn't hold it in. After a few minutes, she wiped her tears on the back of her sleeve and forced herself to stand. She needed to keep moving. There was a ranch nearby that she had seen from the road. From a distance, it looked alive. Smoke rose gently from a chimney, the fences were well kept, and the sound of horses neighing reached her ears. It was the first sign of life she had seen in days, and hope, fragile but persistent, began to bloom inside her chest. Maybe, just maybe, someone there would help. She approached slowly, unsure of what she would say. Her heart beat fast, and her hands shook as she pushed the gate open. The sound echoed loudly, and she immediately felt the weight of being an intruder. But before she could turn around and leave, a man appeared. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with hands rough from work and a face that looked both tired and alert. His eyes, sharp yet kind, studied her carefully. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice calm but strong. The young woman swallowed hard, trying to steady her voice. I have nowhere to go. I don't have family. I don't have anyone. I'm just asking if maybe I can stay for a while. I can work. I won't be a burden." Her words tumbled out quickly, almost desperate but honest. The rancher's gaze softened slightly, though he didn't say anything at first. He had seen people like her before, wandering into his land, looking for a handout. Most times they left as quickly as they came. But there was something about her, something that told him she wasn't just looking for free food or a place to sleep. There was fear, yes, but also determination, and for some reason he felt the pull to give her a chance. "Okay," he said finally, "you can stay. But just for tonight, I can't promise anything more. You'll need to follow the rules here." Relief washed over her like a warm wave. She nodded quickly, almost unable to speak. Thank you so much." The rancher led her to a small cabin near the main house. It was simple, with a bed, a wooden table, and a small stove. Nothing fancy, but it was clean and safe. For the first time in days, she felt a sense of security. She sat on the edge of the bed, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, and let herself breathe. That night, she cooked a simple meal with ingredients the rancher provided. They ate in silence, the kind of comfortable silence that doesn't demand words but doesn't feel empty either. The girl felt a strange mix of shame and gratitude. She had always been independent, always believed she could face anything on her own. But tonight, she realized she couldn't, and it was okay to accept help. After dinner, the rancher left her alone in the cabin. She unpacked the few things she had carried in her coat pockets, a small photograph of her parents, a worn-out notebook, and a pen. She stared at the photo for a long time, remembering the love she had lost and the life she wished she could have had. Then for the first time in months, she allowed herself to dream. Maybe, if she worked hard and stayed strong, she could rebuild her life here. Maybe she could find a new family, a new sense of belonging. Sleep came slowly, but it came. And as she drifted off, she didn't think about the past or the future. She only thought about the present, a small cabin, a kind stranger, and a chance to survive another day. The next morning, the sun rose over the ranch, casting golden light on the fields and barns. The young woman woke before dawn, determined to prove that she deserved the chance she had been given. She dressed quickly, her movements careful and deliberate, and stepped outside. The ranch was already alive with activity. Horses were being fed, fences repaired, and the scent of fresh hay filled the air. She realized that this place was not just a home, it was a world she could be part of if she worked hard enough. The rancher appeared from the barn, his eyes scanning the fields before settling on her. "You ready to start?" he asked. She nodded, trying to hide the nerves fluttering in her stomach. "Yes, sir." And with that, her first day began, a day of learning, of sweat, and of slowly finding a place in a world that had seemed so cruel. Every task she completed, every small success, became a step toward hope. She learned how to feed the animals, mend fences, and care for the land. The work was hard, exhausting even, but it grounded her. It reminded her that she still had strength, that she still had value. As evening approached, the girl sat on the porch of the cabin, looking out at the horizon. She felt tired, yes, but also a spark of something she hadn't felt in a long time: belonging. Maybe this ranch could be more than a temporary shelter. Maybe this rancher, with his quiet kindness, could be more than a stranger. And though she did not yet know it, that first step through the gate would be the first step in a journey that would change her life forever. The next morning, the young woman woke before the sun had fully risen. The sky was painted with soft pink and pale gold, and the ranch seemed alive even at this early hour. The smell of fresh earth, hay, and animals filled the air, and the distant sound of horses whinnying created a sense of calm she hadn't felt in months. She took a deep breath, feeling the crisp air in her lungs, and reminded herself that she was not on the streets anymore. For the first time in a long while, she felt safe, though she also knew that safety could disappear if she made a mistake. The rancher was already outside, moving quickly but quietly. He had a way of doing his work that demanded respect without needing to raise his voice. She watched him for a moment, noticing the way his hands moved with experience and precision. He was a man used to responsibility, someone who had learned to rely only on himself. And yet, just a few days ago, he had chosen to allow a stranger into his life, into his space. She felt a mix of gratitude and nervousness. She knew she had to prove that letting her stay had not been a mistake. "Good morning," he said simply, not looking up at her at first. "Good morning," she replied, her voice steady despite the nervous energy she felt inside. He finally turned to face her. His eyes were calm but sharp, and she could sense the weight of judgment in them. "I hope you're ready to work. There's a lot to do, and I don't have time to babysit anyone." She nodded quickly. "I understand. I'll do my best." And with that, her first full day at the ranch began. She started by feeding the chickens, carrying buckets of feed and scattering them carefully across the yard. Her arms ached almost immediately, and her hands became sticky with grain, but she didn't complain. Every small task felt like a step toward earning her place. She was determined to show the rancher that she was worth keeping. After the chickens, she moved to the barn where the horses were waiting. The rancher showed her how to brush them, check their hooves, and make sure they had fresh water. He watched her closely as she worked, occasionally correcting her technique but never raising his voice. His calm patience encouraged her, though it also reminded her that she had to pay attention and follow instructions carefully. As the day wore on, she learned more than she had expected. She discovered that running a ranch was not just about feeding animals or cleaning stalls. It required observation, patience, and understanding the rhythms of life on the land. She had never imagined herself in such a place, but slowly she felt herself becoming part of it. The ranch was demanding, yes, but it also offered a sense of purpose that the city never had. Here she was needed. Here she could make a difference. At lunchtime, the rancher handed her a small sandwich and a bottle of water. They ate in silence at first, the kind of silence that feels neither awkward nor tense. After a few bites, the young woman found the courage to speak. "Thank you for letting me stay," she said quietly. I know it's not easy to take someone like me in." The rancher shrugged, still chewing. "It's not easy, but it's not impossible either. You just have to show me that you belong here." "I will," she promised, her eyes meeting his. There was sincerity in her voice, and he seemed to notice it. For a moment, his expression softened, though he quickly returned to his work-focused demeanor. The afternoon passed with more tasks: mending fences, gathering hay, and helping the rancher repair a broken gate. She was exhausted by the time the sun began to dip toward the horizon, her muscles sore and her hands scraped and bruised. Yet, despite the physical pain, she felt an unfamiliar satisfaction. Every task she completed reminded her that she was capable, that she could survive and maybe even thrive, despite the hardships she had endured. As the day drew to a close, the rancher walked her to the small cabin she would call home for now. He handed her a bucket of water to clean herself and instructed her to wash up before dinner. She obeyed silently, carefully scrubbing the dirt and sweat from her skin. When she emerged, the rancher had prepared a simple meal: bread, soup, and fresh vegetables. They ate together, and for the first time she noticed something in him beyond the quiet, stern exterior. There was a sense of watchfulness, yes, but also a hint of care. After dinner, they sat in the fading light on the porch. The rancher leaned back in his chair, watching the animals as they settled down for the night. The girl hesitated before speaking. Do you ever get lonely?" she asked softly. He looked at her for a moment, surprised by the question. Then he nodded slowly. "Yes," he admitted, "but I've learned to manage it. Loneliness is easier when you have work to do, responsibilities to focus on." I understand," she said. "I've been alone for so long, I forgot how to feel safe, but being here it feels different." He didn't respond immediately, but she could tell he was considering her words carefully. The truth was, he had noticed her resilience, her willingness to work and adapt, and it had stirred something inside him. Most people who came to the ranch either complained or left quickly, but she had stayed and she had worked. That mattered more than he expected. Night fell, and the stars began to twinkle in the clear sky above. The girl sat quietly, listening to the sounds of the ranch, the soft breathing of the horses, the distant hoot of an owl, the rustling of leaves in the gentle wind. For the first time in months, she felt calm. The city, with all its noise and danger, seemed like a distant memory. Here, on this land, with this man who had allowed her to stay, she had a chance to begin again. She thought about her future, though she tried not to get ahead of herself. She knew that one day she might have to leave, that this place was not a guaranteed home. But for now she had a small window of safety, a chance to rebuild herself, and that was enough. She made a silent promise to work hard, to follow the rules, and to earn the trust that had been given to her. The rancher, meanwhile, retired to his own cabin. He sat in quiet thought, reflecting on the day and the girl who had entered his life so unexpectedly. He was a man who had spent most of his life relying on himself, trusting few people, and avoiding unnecessary complications. And yet there was something about her, a determination, a vulnerability, a spark of hope, that made him consider breaking his usual rules. He wasn't sure what the future held, but he knew one thing. She had a place on his land, at least for now, and he wanted to see if she could prove that she belonged. The next morning, the routine continued. The girl rose with the sun, her body aching but her spirit motivated. She fed the animals, cleaned the barns, and helped wherever she could. Each day was a test, not just of her physical strength but of her patience, her resilience, and her ability to adapt to a world that was harsher than she had ever imagined. And with each passing day, the rancher watched her closely, noticing small signs of growth, small moments where her courage shone through. By the end of the week, the rancher finally spoke more openly with her. "You're learning quickly," he said. "You work hard and you don't complain. That matters. Not many people who come here could do what you've done in just a few days." The girl felt a warmth in her chest she hadn't felt in a long time. "Thank you," she said. I'm trying. I want to stay. I want to belong." The rancher nodded, a hint of a smile on his lips. "Keep working like this. Show me you can handle it, and maybe this place can be more than temporary for you." For the first time in months, she felt hope that was more than fragile. She realized that belonging wasn't something given freely. It was earned through effort, honesty, and determination. And she was ready to earn it, no matter how hard the work, no matter how long it took. That week marked the beginning of something important. It was not dramatic, not filled with sudden miracles or revelations, but it was real. It was tangible. It was life moving forward step by step through effort and courage. And for the young woman, that was enough. Days turned into weeks, and the young woman settled into a rhythm she had never imagined she could have. Every morning, she woke before sunrise, the cool air brushing against her face as she stepped outside the cabin. She could hear the distant lowing of cows, the clatter of hooves on the stable floor, and the occasional soft whinny of a horse greeting the day. The ranch was alive with movement, work, and quiet energy, and slowly she began to feel like she was a part of it, not just a visitor, but someone who mattered. The rancher, who had first allowed her to stay out of a sense of duty or perhaps curiosity, began to notice subtle changes in her. She was no longer the frightened, uncertain girl who had stumbled through the gate weeks ago. She moved with purpose, her hands sure and steady as she fed animals or repaired fences. She asked questions when she didn't understand something, listened carefully, and completed tasks with attention to detail. He began to realize that her presence brought more than just extra help. It brought a quiet energy that made the ranch feel warmer, more alive. Despite the progress she was making, the girl remained cautious. She had learned through bitter experience that the world could be cruel and that trust could be fleeting. She worked hard, not only because she wanted to stay, but because she feared what would happen if she failed. The rancher had given her a chance, but it was not permanent. Every mistake she made could cost her the small stability she had finally found. One morning, the rancher called her over to help with the horses. A few of them were restless after a cold night, and he needed someone steady to assist. She approached him with a calm determination, and together they guided the animals to the paddock. As they worked side by side, he watched her movements, noting the careful way she approached each horse. There was patience in her, a respect for the animals and for the land, and it impressed him more than words could say. "You're improving faster than I expected," he said quietly as they finished. The girl looked up, a small smile breaking across her face. "Thank you. I want to do it right. I don't want to disappoint you." He studied her for a moment and then he allowed himself a small nod of approval. "You won't. Just keep paying attention and working hard. That's all anyone can ask." Their relationship, though still cautious and professional on the surface, was beginning to change in small ways. The rancher found himself checking on her more often, noticing when she struggled with a task or seemed tired. He offered advice and guidance, not out of obligation, but because he genuinely wanted to see her succeed. And she, in turn, began to see him as more than just a stern authority figure. She saw the quiet kindness behind his careful eyes, the way he worked tirelessly without complaint, and the way he seemed to understand, without words, what she needed most: stability, respect, and a sense of belonging. One evening, after a long day of chores, they sat together on the porch as the sun dipped below the horizon. The air was filled with the scent of fresh grass and hay, and the distant sound of a stream trickling through the fields added to the peacefulness. The girl felt a warmth she hadn't known in years, a feeling of being seen, valued, and safe. "I never thought I'd find a place like this," she said softly, almost to herself. The rancher glanced at her, curious. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, then spoke again. "A place where I can belong, where I can work and feel useful, where I don't have to be afraid all the time." He didn't respond immediately, but she could see something flicker in his expression, a recognition of her honesty, a quiet understanding. He had lived much of his life alone, relying only on himself, and yet he understood her fear and her need for safety, because he, too, had experienced loneliness and the desire for connection. "Belonging isn't easy," he said finally. "It has to be earned, and it takes time. But I can see you're trying, and that counts for a lot." The girl nodded, feeling a surge of gratitude. She wanted to say more, to express how much this meant to her, but words felt inadequate. Instead, she focused on continuing her work, letting her actions speak for her dedication and determination. As the days passed, the rancher began to involve her in more complex tasks. She learned to repair fences with precision, handle livestock during vaccinations, and even help with the planning of planting and harvesting. Each new responsibility was a test, but she embraced them with courage and care. Her confidence grew, and with it, a sense of pride she hadn't felt in years. One afternoon, a sudden storm rolled in. Dark clouds gathered quickly, and the wind began to whip across the fields. The rancher and the girl worked together to secure the animals, making sure the horses were safe in the barn, and the smaller animals sheltered. The storm raged for hours, with heavy rain and gusting winds, but they stayed focused on their tasks. By the time the storm passed, the sun had returned, casting golden light over the wet fields. "Good work," the rancher said as they surveyed the barn. "You handled yourself well out there." The girl smiled, soaked but proud. "I'm learning from the best," she replied. He shook his head slightly, a rare smile touching his lips. "Don't flatter me. You've earned this through effort." Through experiences like these, their bond deepened, not through grand gestures but through shared work, challenges faced together, and quiet respect. The rancher began to trust her judgment, relying on her more and more each day. And the girl began to feel a sense of ownership over the ranch, not in terms of property, but in terms of responsibility, care, and belonging. Still, the girl's past lingered in the background, a shadow she could not ignore. Memories of abandonment, fear, and rejection occasionally surfaced, reminding her that her safety here was fragile. She sometimes caught herself worrying that the rancher might change his mind, or that some unforeseen event would send her back into a world that had no place for her. These fears drove her to work harder, to be more diligent, and to never let her guard down. One evening, after a long day of feeding and cleaning, she found herself sitting quietly by the stream that ran along the edge of the property. She watched the water flow gently over rocks, reflecting the colors of the sunset. She thought about her journey, the hardships she had endured, the loneliness she had felt, and the small miracle of finding a place where she could start over. Tears welled in her eyes, not from sadness, but from a mixture of relief, gratitude, and the overwhelming realization that life could change in ways she had never imagined. The rancher approached quietly, sitting down beside her without a word. He didn't need to ask questions or offer advice. His presence alone was enough. After a few moments, he spoke softly. "You've come a long way. I can see it, and so can everyone else who works here." She turned to him, her voice barely a whisper. I hope I can keep going. I hope I can keep proving myself." "You will," he said with certainty. "Just keep being yourself and working hard. That's all anyone can ask of you." That night, as she lay in the small cabin, she thought about everything she had experienced over the past weeks. She had found work, safety, and a sense of purpose. She had faced storms, exhaustion, and fear, and she had survived. And she had begun to form a connection with someone who had offered her more than just shelter. He had offered her trust and respect. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to dream. She imagined a future where she could continue to grow, contribute, and belong. She imagined a life where she didn't have to be afraid, where hard work and determination could truly make a difference. And she realized that, though she had come to the ranch as a girl with nothing, she was slowly becoming someone who mattered, not just to herself, but to the rancher and the land she was learning to care for. The next morning, she woke with renewed energy. She fed the animals, tended the fields, and helped the rancher wherever he needed her. Each task, no matter how small, became a way to prove to herself and to him that she could be relied upon. And with every passing day, she felt the invisible walls around her heart begin to crumble. Trust was growing, courage was growing, and hope, fragile but persistent, was beginning to bloom. And though she didn't yet know what challenges the future would bring, she understood one important truth. She had found a place where she could start again, a place where she could belong. And that was worth every effort, every struggle, and every drop of sweat she had given to the land and the life she was building. The days at the ranch had begun to feel like a new kind of normal. The young woman had grown into her routine, waking early, working hard, and gradually earning the quiet respect of the rancher. Yet even as she felt a sense of belonging for the first time in years, she could not escape the memories that haunted her. Nights alone in the cabin were often filled with thoughts of the past, painful moments, mistakes she had made, people who had turned their backs on her. She had hoped that being here, so far away from her old life, would allow her to forget, but the past has a way of catching up, no matter how far you run. One afternoon, as she was repairing a fence along the edge of the property, she noticed a figure in the distance. At first, she thought it was a passerby or a traveler, but as the figure drew closer, her heart sank. It was someone from her past, someone she had tried to forget. Fear and panic surged through her. She froze, the hammer in her hand falling to the ground as her mind raced. What if this person wanted to drag her back into the life she had struggled to escape? What if the rancher, her only safe place, could not protect her from what was coming? The rancher noticed her sudden pause. "Is everything okay?" he called out. She shook her head quickly, trying to hide her fear. I think someone from my past is here," she admitted, her voice barely audible. He walked over, his expression serious but calm. "Who is it?" she hesitated. The words caught in her throat. "Someone who abandoned me. Someone who could make everything fall apart if they wanted to." The rancher nodded, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. "Stay here. I'll handle it." The figure approached, revealing themselves to be a relative who had turned their back on her years ago. Their eyes were cold, filled with judgment, and for a moment the young woman felt the old fear rising in her chest. But she also felt the rancher's presence beside her, steady and strong, and it gave her a small measure of courage. "Is this where you've been hiding?" the relative asked, voice sharp. "After everything you've done, do you really think anyone will protect you here?" The young woman's hands shook, but she stood her ground. "I am not hiding. I am working. I am living my life. And yes, I am safe here." The rancher stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "She is safe here, and she has earned her place on this land. If you have come to bring trouble, you will leave now." The relative hesitated, surprised by his tone and authority. They had expected her to cower, to beg, but instead, they saw a girl who had grown stronger, who had found support in a place they had abandoned. After a tense moment, the relative turned and walked away, leaving her and the rancher alone. The young woman let out a shaky breath, her body trembling from relief and lingering fear. "Thank you," she whispered. "You don't need to thank me," the rancher said. "You handled yourself well. That shows strength." That evening, she sat in the cabin, reflecting on what had happened. She realized that the past was not something she could completely escape. People and memories might resurface, and life might test her again. But she also understood that she no longer had to face those challenges alone. The rancher had shown her that she could have support, guidance, and protection without judgment. For the first time, she felt truly seen and valued. The next few days were filled with work, but the shadow of the encounter lingered. The rancher noticed her quiet moments of reflection and spoke gently one afternoon as they mended a section of fence. "You don't have to carry your past alone," he said. "It's part of you, yes, but it doesn't define you. What defines you is what you do today, here and now." She nodded, grateful for his words. "I know, it's just hard to forget sometimes. I've been on my own for so long and fear it doesn't leave easily." He paused, considering her words. "Fear is normal, but it doesn't have to control you. You've already proven that. You've faced challenges before and you've faced them here. That counts for a lot." His encouragement gave her courage, and slowly the fear began to loosen its grip. She worked harder, not just to prove herself to him, but to prove herself to herself. She wanted to show that she could survive, that she could thrive, and that she could handle whatever life threw at her. One afternoon, as she was tending to the horses, she noticed a young colt struggling to stand. Panic rose in her chest, but she remembered the rancher's lessons and acted quickly. She guided the colt carefully, using her strength and patience until it steadied on its legs. The rancher arrived just in time to see her steadying the animal. "Good work," he said quietly. "You handled that perfectly. That's not something everyone could do." She smiled, feeling pride swell in her chest. For the first time, she saw herself not as someone weak or abandoned, but as someone capable, resilient, and strong. But even as she grew stronger, life reminded her that challenges were never truly gone. One evening, while she was preparing dinner, a letter arrived at the ranch. It was from a former employer who had fired her unfairly, accusing her of mistakes she hadn't made. The letter demanded repayment for damages and threatened legal action if she did not comply. Her heart sank. It was a reminder that the world outside the ranch still held judgment, cruelty, and challenges she could not ignore. She took the letter to the rancher, fear written clearly on her face. I don't know what to do. They're threatening me and I don't have money and I don't have anyone to help me." The rancher took the letter, reading it carefully. He looked up at her, calm but firm. "We'll handle this together. You are not alone anymore. You have done nothing wrong, and I will make sure you are protected." Relief washed over her, but it was accompanied by a realization. The past might continue to knock on her door, but she had someone who would stand by her. She did not have to face fear or threats alone. The rancher's support gave her strength she hadn't known she possessed. Over the following weeks, she began to see her life in a new light. The ranch was not just a place to work. It was a place to grow, to learn, and to heal. She learned that belonging was not about forgetting the past, but about facing it while moving forward. She discovered that trust was built slowly, through consistent effort, honesty, and courage. And she understood that family could be chosen, not just born into. One afternoon, as she worked alongside the rancher in the fields, she realized just how far she had come. The sun was warm on her back, the wind was gentle, and the ranch felt alive with possibility. She looked at the man who had taken her in, who had offered her guidance and protection, and felt a deep sense of gratitude. She no longer felt like a lost girl with nowhere to go. She felt like someone who mattered, someone who could face life with courage, and someone who had finally begun to find a true home. The rancher, too, noticed the changes in her. He had seen her grow from a timid, fearful girl into a capable, confident young woman. He had witnessed her resilience, her determination, and her willingness to face challenges head-on. And though he rarely spoke about his feelings, he felt a quiet pride in her progress. She had not only survived, but she had also begun to thrive, and he knew that whatever the future held, she was ready to face it. That evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of gold and orange, the young woman sat quietly on the porch of the cabin. She reflected on the challenges she had faced, the fears she had overcome, and the lessons she had learned. She thought about the past, the people who had abandoned her, the hardships she had endured, and the pain she had felt, and realized that those experiences had shaped her, but they did not define her. She also thought about the rancher, whose quiet strength had given her a safe place to grow. She understood that trust, once broken, could be rebuilt with patience, honesty, and care. She realized that she was learning to trust herself again, to believe in her own abilities, and to face the world with courage. And as the stars began to twinkle in the clear night sky, she made a silent promise to herself. No matter what challenges the future might bring, she would face them with strength, honesty, and determination. She would continue to work hard to grow and to honor the second chance she had been given. For the first time in a long while, she felt hope, not fragile or fleeting, but steady and real. She had faced the return of the past, the threats of old acquaintances, and the memories of abandonment. Yet she had not faltered. She had stood her ground, earned the trust of the rancher, and begun to build a life worth living. And she knew deep in her heart that the future, though uncertain, was full of possibility. The young woman had grown in ways she had never imagined possible. Weeks and months had passed since she first stepped onto the ranch, weary and afraid, with nowhere to go. She had arrived broken, uncertain, and burdened by fear of rejection, but now she moved through the ranch with quiet confidence. Her hands were strong, her mind sharp, and her heart open in ways she hadn't allowed before. She had earned her place here, not just through work, but through patience, determination, and courage. The rancher had watched this transformation closely. He had seen her face storms, confront her past, and handle challenges that would have made others give up. He had seen her fear turn into strength and her hesitation into determination. Over time, he had come to understand that she was not just a capable worker, but someone with a heart willing to trust and grow. And slowly, without even realizing it, the rancher had come to care for her, not out of obligation, but out of respect and genuine admiration for her courage. One morning, the young woman woke to a gentle sunrise, painting the ranch in soft, golden light. She stepped outside, the air fresh and cool, and felt a deep sense of belonging she had never known before. The animals were stirring, the fields glimmered with dew, and the quiet hum of life on the ranch reminded her that she had found a place where she could be herself. For the first time, she didn't feel the constant fear that had once ruled her days. She had a home now, a purpose, and someone who believed in her. The rancher appeared, carrying tools for the day's work. He nodded at her silently, a simple gesture that spoke volumes. Together they walked toward the barn where chores awaited, but it no longer felt like labor. It felt like life, steady and grounding. Each task reminded her of how far she had come, how much she had learned, and how capable she truly was. After the morning chores, they sat for a brief rest near the edge of the fields. The young woman leaned back against the fence, breathing in the scent of hay and earth, and allowed herself a moment to reflect. "I can't believe how much has changed," she said softly. "Just a few months ago I had nothing. Now I feel like I finally belong somewhere." The rancher studied her for a moment, his expression calm but thoughtful. "You do belong," he said. "You've worked for it, earned it, and shown everyone here, including me, that you are capable. You belong because you have proven your strength and your heart." She smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. For so long, she had believed that family, protection, and safety were things only others could give. Now she understood that belonging also meant showing up every day, giving your best, and trusting that people could see your effort and your heart. She realized that she was not defined by the past, but by the actions she took in the present and the courage she showed every day. Life on the ranch continued, but now the young woman no longer felt like a visitor. She had responsibilities she could manage independently. She tended to the animals, repaired fences, and even helped train a new foal. Each day presented challenges, yes, but challenges she faced with strength and skill. She had learned that life was not about waiting for safety to come to her, but about creating it through effort, honesty, and persistence. One evening, after a long day of work, the rancher approached her with a serious look. She wondered briefly if she had made a mistake somewhere, but his expression softened as he spoke. "You've done well," he said, "better than I expected. You've shown resilience, courage, and a willingness to learn. You've earned more than just a temporary place here." Her heart leapt. "Are you saying," she began, unsure how to put her feelings into words. "Yes," he said simply, "I'm saying this can be your home. You don't have to leave. You've proven that you belong here. You've become part of this place, part of the life we have on this ranch." Tears filled her eyes, not from sadness, but from relief and gratitude. For the first time in her life, she felt completely accepted, completely safe, and completely at peace with the idea that she had a home and a family, even if it was unconventional. She had dreamed of this, hoped for it, but never truly believed it could happen. And now it was real. The rancher watched her reaction quietly, knowing that words alone could never convey the journey she had taken. She had arrived broken and alone, but she had grown into someone strong, confident, and capable. He had provided guidance and support, but the real work had been hers, and he admired that more than anything. Over the following weeks, the young woman settled into this new reality. She no longer doubted herself or her place on the ranch. She worked hard, cared for the animals, and contributed to the daily life of the land. But beyond work, she began to connect with the rancher in deeper ways. Their conversations became more relaxed, filled with shared laughter, quiet understanding, and occasional gentle teasing. The trust between them grew stronger, built on shared experiences, challenges faced together, and the knowledge that they had each other's backs. One evening, as the sun set and the sky turned a brilliant orange, she stood near the barn, watching the horses settle for the night. She thought about the past, the fear, the loneliness, the constant uncertainty, and realized how far she had come. She was no longer the frightened girl who had begged for a place to stay. She was a young woman with strength, courage, and hope. She had learned that family was not always born, but could be created through trust, care, and shared effort. The rancher joined her quietly, standing beside her without saying a word. They watched the sky together, and she felt a sense of peace wash over her. She no longer feared the past or the unknown future. She had learned that life could be hard, yes, but that it could also be filled with kindness, trust, and belonging. And she knew, with certainty, that she had found all of that here. Weeks later, the rancher entrusted her with responsibilities that were once his alone, overseeing the feeding schedule, managing the barns, and ensuring the animals were safe. She accepted these duties with pride, knowing they were a sign of his trust and respect. She worked with diligence and care, understanding that this was not just work, but a symbol of her place in the life they were building together. Through her journey, she realized something important. Belonging was not a gift freely given. It was earned, nurtured, and protected. She had earned her place through hard work, resilience, and courage. And the rancher, who had once been a stranger, had become someone she trusted, someone who believed in her, and someone who would stand by her no matter what challenges arose. One quiet evening, as they sat on the porch after a long day, she spoke softly. "I never thought I would feel this safe, or like I could belong somewhere. Thank you for giving me this chance, for believing in me, for letting me stay." The rancher nodded, a small smile touching his lips. "You've done the hard work yourself. I only gave you the chance. You've proven that you deserve it, and that's all that matters." For the first time in her life, she felt a complete sense of home. She was no longer a girl with nowhere to go. She was someone who had survived, grown, and found a place where she could live with dignity, purpose, and hope. She had discovered that family could be chosen, that trust could be rebuilt, and that strength could grow even from the hardest experiences. As the days turned into months, her life at the ranch continued, steady and fulfilling. The young woman had transformed from a frightened, lonely girl into a confident, capable young woman who had found safety, trust, and belonging. She had faced the past, endured challenges, and proven to herself that she was strong enough to thrive. The rancher, too, had been changed by the experience. He had learned that opening his life to someone else, even when it felt risky, could bring joy, growth, and a deeper sense of purpose. Together, they had built something meaningful, a bond of trust, respect, and shared life on the ranch. And as the sun rose one morning, casting golden light over the fields and animals, the young woman stepped outside with a sense of gratitude and hope. She had come from nowhere, lost and alone, and had found a home, a family, and a future. Life was not perfect, but it was full of possibility, and for the first time she believed in the promise of tomorrow. She looked toward the rancher, who was already tending to the horses, and felt a deep sense of peace. She had faced her fears, confronted her past, and discovered her own strength. And she knew, without a doubt, that she had found a place to belong, a place to grow, to thrive, and to live fully. Her journey had been long, painful, and uncertain, but it had led her here, to safety, to trust, and to a home where she was truly valued. And for the first time in her life, she felt whole.